have spent 16 years on the Sonoma County Mycological Association. Very proud of our work that we've done there. We've had forays, and so we do an annual camp over the Martin Luther King weekend, and those make money, and all the money that we make go to scholarships for mycology and microbiology. So we've done a very good job putting that together and helping promote education. Let me see if I can forward my slides. There we go. So the first thing that I ask people is, what do they think of when they think of a mushroom? And most people, the most recognized symbol of a mushroom is the mushroom with the red cap and the white dots. Happens to be an Amanita muscaria or fly agaric mushroom, and very, very common, used in all sorts of books and kids' toys. Very, very easy to recognize. So the question I always ask people is, do you think this is poisonous? And most people say, oh, it's red. It looks like it's probably poisonous. And they are correct. It does have a poison to it. It is both a hallucinogenic and a make you throw up mushroom. And there are several different, actually, like 4 main toxins that are found in mushrooms. And everybody, when they found out, when I first got into mushroom, like 2007, was like, oh, be careful, don't poison yourself. And the main thing I tell people is I liken it to plants. You don't go out, walking around the forest or in your backyard tasting plants that you don't recognize, that you're not sure what they are. There's poisonous plants too, right? And people don't warn you not to eat poisonous plants. So you just don't eat mushrooms that you don't learn to identify, that you don't recognize, right? Sounds simple. The key is to learn and know how to educate yourself and learn how to identify them 100%, to know with absolute certainty what it is. And, it's just start with one. I started with 1 a year, 1 to 2 a year that I would learn to recognize. Started with a golden chanterelle, very easy to recognize, no deadly poisonous lookalikes, and that's how you start. So mushroom lore. Go back to the fly agaric, the Amanita muscaria. It's in, like I was saying, in all sorts of mushroom lore, and that's where the Sonoma County Mycological Association, it's actually called Soma, the divine mushroom of immortality, and it's referring to the Amanita muscaria, and so that became our acronym for Sonoma County Mycological Association. And there are people who speculate or suggest that this mushroom has something to do with Santa Claus and flying reindeer, but I don't know if I believe that. But it is funny to think about. So poisoning. So again, like I mentioned, everybody I tell that I love to go mushrooming and eat wild mushrooms always are like, well, be careful. Make sure you're careful about what you eat. And it's been interesting being on the Sonoma County Mycological Association board and having one of our scientists be the person that the poison control here calls when there's a poisoning, and usually the poisonings are dogs, not people. With the different types of poisonings, it's not necessarily what you think. Like a common one that happens is stress-induced. So people eat a mushroom, they're not sure 100% what it is. They're pretty sure that it's edible, and they eat it anyway because they're excited, and then they cause themselves to get stomach upset because they are so nervous that they eat a poisonous mushroom that they make themselves sick. That happens. That really does happen. And then we've had other cases where people eat rotten mushrooms. So they do go bad. make sure that they're fresh. If you're eating them, don't eat things that are not firm and smell good. And then the other cases are there are food allergies. So there are, people who can't eat certain mushrooms. My son is one of them. There's one that's commonly eaten. It does cause some people gastronomical distress. So he gets sick whenever he eats it, and so he can't eat that mushroom. So it's good that when you're starting to eat wild mushrooms, just like if you're eating something new and different and exotic, that you just eat a little bit at a time. Like take a couple bites of it and set it aside. And if it, a few hours later or next day, if it agrees with you, then you can eat some more of it. Make sure you're not allergic to it. Most adjusted poisonous mushrooms also are not deadly. They're referred to as lose your lunch bunch, as what we are commonly referred to, like in one of the books I'll be talking about, All the Rain That Promises and More by David Aurora. He talks about the backyard mushrooms or field mushrooms, and they're not deadly, but they will make you throw up. And the joke is make you wish you were dead, but it's just make you really sick for a day, and then you'll be fine. So again, identification is key. You want to make sure you're certain 100% that you followed all the guidelines on how to identify the mushroom before you eat it. And then deadly poisonous mushrooms like the death cap and the destroying angel, they can look somewhat similar to white store-bought mushrooms, and they don't have a distinct taste or smell, and cooking does not destroy the poison. And people eat them. It starts off within six hours or so, or more later, they start getting severe stomach pain, vomiting, diarrhea, and then the symptoms progress. They have seizures, and it usually causes kidney and liver damage. It's a slow and painful death. So it's not like in the movies where someone poisons their nemesis with a mushroom and they die immediately. It's a slow, painful liver failure death usually. So now that I really scared you, I was a little scared myself at first of any white mushroom, because that's what the death cap and the destroying angel look like. They're white. Here's some pictures of them. And especially in California, the poisonings that have people who are from Asian countries where they have straw mushrooms that look kind of similar as buttons. And they come here and they think it's the same mushroom as they grew up eating in their country where they're from, and they pick these thinking they're straw mushrooms, and they unfortunately eat them. They taste fine. They don't taste bad. So that's part of why they're so deadly. Okay. So I'm done with the scaring you with the poisonous mushroom stuff. Again, it's education's key, knowledge is key. You don't eat them unless you're sure. But it could be a lot of fun. And, foraging, you learn to forage, not just mushrooms, but other, things as well. It can really be gratifying and connect you with nature and give you a lot of healthy and delicious food. And there's definite correlations to health benefits. Shinrin-yoku forest bathing is actually practiced very widely in Japan. It's actually prescribed by doctors there. Go out in the forest, 2 hours a week to help de-stress. So this is very well documented. This is from Dr. King Lee. He talks about forest bathing and how by 2050 they're projecting that 66% of the world's population will live in cities. And according to the sponsored a study sponsored by the Environmental Protection Agency, the average American spends 93% of their time indoors. So getting outside and connecting with nature can really help you, get away from technology a little bit and reduce some of the stress, help relax you. So it has real health benefits. And especially in our technology-filled world, getting away into the woods and forest bathing and spending time immersed in nature is helps keep us all sane. And mushroom hunting is a lot of fun. I liken it to Easter egg hunting for kids of any age. It's so fun to be going through the woods, and once you start looking for them, start seeing them different places, it's like looking for flowers. It's only they're mushrooms, and they can be colorful and interesting and distinct, and really stand out in the woods. And it's fun once you start noticing them. So health benefits continued on eating mushrooms. They're very healthy for you. They're actually most similar to insects. They have what's called chitin, which is what many things like grasshopper, insects, crustaceans have, like kind of an exoskeleton structure of chitin. The cell wall of the mushroom, and it works much like cellulose creates walls of a plant. It holds the mushroom in. And since most mushrooms are mostly chitin, glutens, and proteins, they're a very good source of dietary fiber. And unfortunately, eating them raw doesn't really do much for you. Some people can digest the chitins, but most people can't. And so if you really want to get the nutritional benefits of the mushroom, you need to cook them first to break down the chitin so that you can more easily digest them. Some people can't digest any of the chitin at all. So eating the raw crimini in your salad is just like eating foam. It just make you feel full, but you won't be able to fully digest it and absorb the nutrition of it without cooking it. It's also important to know that there are mushrooms that you can eat raw, and there's mushrooms that you cannot eat raw. So, for example, crimini mushrooms, the ones that we get in the store, the portobello, same thing. They're the same mushroom at different stages of development. The Latin names like Agaricus bisporus are edible raw. Porcini is, shiitake, matsutake, and kokura are all edible raw. But it's good to know which ones you can't. So morel mushrooms, we hear about regularly, people eating them because they didn't cook them well enough and getting sick. They're poisonous. They contain hydrazine toxins that if you eat them raw, it will make you sick and not typically deadly, but it will make you very, very sick. So be sure that you cook your morel mushrooms if you're eating those. So storing mushrooms. So wild mushrooms obviously don't last as long as store-bought mushrooms. If you do collect wild mushrooms, there's several methods for keeping them fresh and cool. They are a cool plant. They like to be cool, so avoid using plastic. It just makes them sweat and get slimy. So paper bag methods used by a lot of people is stick them in a paper bag, close up the paper bag, or something that's an airtight container, so that keeps the moisture in. If you're putting it in your refrigerator, because refrigerators take out moisture, and so you want to keep the moisture in there. The bowl method is a very popular one with like a metal or porcelain bowl. Just put a damp cloth over the top of the bowl and maybe make it damp, like a damp hand towel or something over the bowl, and that keeps them cool and keeps the moisture in. So mushrooms as decomposers. So mushrooms are often associated with death and decomposition, which is true. They help break down linen, substances of the cell walls of trees. So they're a very important part of our ecosystem. But they also can have a mycorrhizal relationship with trees, so help feed and break down soil and nutrients in the soil for the trees and plants to absorb. So it wasn't that long ago that there was a misunderstanding that if you wanted to grow healthy plants, you'd have sterile soil. And they'd wonder why it would take so long to start their seeds in this sterilized soil. And it's because the plants do rely on the good bacteria and fungi, mycorrhizal relationships in the soil to help them grow. So now you actually can buy soil that's inoculated with mycelium to help your plants grow, which actually they've done lots of studies, and having the mycelium in the soil really does help the plants grow healthier, stronger, because of that mycorrhizal relationship. And I get asked frequently, about, the fruiting body, the mushroom itself. The mycelium is actually under the ground. It's almost like a root system, like a tree underground. And the mushroom, just like an apple is on a tree, is the fruiting body of the mycelium. So it is how it procreates. It uses spores through the mushroom, and so picking it's not going to hurt the mycelium growing underground. So people ask me, should I cut it? Is it okay to pull it off? Just grab it off the ground, and will that hurt the mycelium? And there's no evidence to show that just even pulling it hurts it, or cutting it's better. Obviously we tell people to leave the forest nice, so don't leave your mushroom detritus all over the place with your cuttings, so you cut off the dirt or whatever. But it doesn't hurt the mycelium at all to pluck it. So mushroom cultivation. So a lot of people don't realize that there's mushrooms that we haven't figured out how to cultivate yet, that only can be found in the wild. Either they're not commercially grown because it's not economical, or we haven't been able to figure out the right conditions to make it viable. So like chanterelles and porcini are only collected in the wild. We haven't figured out how to grow them in captivity. We haven't figured out how to cultivate them. So there are, however, a lot of mushrooms that you can grow indoors, and it can be a lot of fun and very nutritious. So King Stropharia, the garden mushroom, a lot of people vegetables in their garden. The wine cap mushroom, it's also called, and they are delicious and beautiful. And you can grow shiitake logs. You can buy kits that you can do it yourself, or buy them already inoculated. You can also grow oyster mushrooms, lion's mane, king trumpets, just to name a few. There's a lot of different mushrooms that you can grow in your house if you don't have a place to grow it outdoors. So there's some good books and tutorials online. If you're interested, you could just Google mushroom kits or grow your own mushrooms. So mushrooms are very versatile. There's a lot of people that are into mushrooms for art. So there's a book was written by Miriam Rice and Dorothy Beebe. Dorothy Beebe's been a long time member of SOMA, the Sonoma County Mycological Association, and she's got a book called Mushrooms for Color. This picture up of the upper right-hand corner is all made from different mushroom dyes, mushrooms that make color fast dyes and pigments. One of my favorite ones here, the Dermoscopy smithii, is a beautiful one, fun to find, and it makes a beautiful red color, the same color of the mushroom. But it's also interesting that some of the mushrooms don't make the same color as they are. There's like some brown mushrooms that make this beautiful purple dye. So there's every color of the spectrum, every color of the rainbow. They have been able to find through mushroom dyes, which is really fun and interesting if you're into fiber arts. And then there's also fungi for paper. So a lot of at the Soma camp, they frequently have classes on how to dye using mushrooms, and also how to make paper out of mushrooms. And usually it's more of the harder shelf fungi that they use, and put it in a food processor or a blender, and then lay it out on a screen to make paper, which is really a lot of fun. And so, where to get started? So the book that I recommend the most for beginners is All the Rain Promises and More by David Aurora. It's up here in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. The guy holding a big chanterelle, looking real happy and kind of sneaking through through the woods there with his trumpet. Looks like he's like at a concert and snuck away outside to find a chanterelle. I don't know. But the author of this book is really humorous. There's great stories in there, and it's got great pictures and a great way to how to go about identifying mushrooms. It's all your senses are involved. It's sight, smell, touch, color, all of it. So you have to use all senses to identify a mushroom. So All the Rain Promises and More is a great starter book, and it's a great field guide. Fits in your pocket, so it's good size. Mushrooms of the Red Coast is a newer book, which is really good. It's big, but it's a great, has a lot more pictures and information, and it's a newer publication. And then there's California Mushrooms, the Comprehensive Identification Guide by Dennis Desjardins and Michael Wood, and The Complete Mushroom Hunter revised by Gary Minkoff. So those are just a few. There's so many mushroom books out there, but those are the ones I recommend if you're for beginners. And be careful about the mushroom books. We have noticed that there's some being sold like on Amazon that look like they're AI generated. So it's good to know, make sure you have a good, reputable book that's written by someone who's a mycologist or a PhD in microbiology or has some expertise and is proven. Don't pick up just any book. And then also learn the habitat. So different books about, trees, like the National Audubon books are good. The Peterson Field Guides are good. Any reputable book on tree and plant identification, because so many of the mushrooms are symbiotic with the different trees. So you learn how to identify your pine trees and fir trees and hardwood trees like oak trees. It's then much easier to find the mushrooms you're looking for because they usually grow with them. And then plan to hunt during the wet season. We're just now getting started in the wet season. So this is a great, if you're attending this and you're just learning about mushrooms, this is a great time to get started because we're just starting the wet season. And that's when here in the Bay Area in Northern California, the mushroom season starts. It starts usually late September, early October, and goes usually through April. At elevation, and then during the spring and summer it goes up, and you can go up in the Rockies and go morel hunting and mushrooming up in the Rockies, up in the mountains, Tahoe area. So mushroom identification. So we talked about books. So most of the books, especially All the Rain Promises and More, start you off with a key in the book of, how to start your identification. Does it have gills underneath it? Does it have a spongy texture underneath it? Or does it have little teeth hanging down underneath it? Or does it have ridges? So those are the 4 predominant mushroom types that we find. And it goes, okay, well, if it has gills, go to this page. If it has sponge, go to this page. If it's got teeth, go to this page, so on. So here you can see I have done that. been using the books here, and here's mushrooms of the Redwood Coast on the left here, and I found bluet mushrooms, which are delicious and beautiful. They're lovely, and they smell like canned orange juice, like orange juice in a can. That's the best way that I can describe it. And then I found on this other page a gill bolete. And so you can see I'm using smell and appearance, and then usually the books have a really good descriptor of odor and even taste. And people are like, taste? You taste the mushroom and you're not sure it is? I'm like, yeah, you can put it in your mouth and taste it, just don't swallow it. Spit it back out. And you won't get poisoned as long as you don't swallow it. So that's how you do mushroom identification. And what is so cool about it is you start to identify things that you wouldn't notice. This is my niece in this picture here. You can see in the picture on the right, it looks like she's just next to some black leaves that are on the ground. But if you look closer up on the left-hand side, a close-up picture with flash, those are black chanterelles, and they're very delicious. They taste, to me, like teriyaki, and they're very, very delicious, very sought after. So you start noticing things that you wouldn't have otherwise noticed before because you weren't looking. And like I said, with the habitat, learning the habitat and learning some of the trees as well is very helpful. This is a porcini. And you can see from the picture on the upper right-hand corner, it's got kind of a spongy underside. And that's because it's in the bolete family. It's called the Boletus edulis is the Latin name. And they grow with pine trees. So a lot of times out on the Sonoma Coast, especially, like at Salt Point State Park, where you can collect mushrooms, you go look for pine trees, and this time of year, like early fall and spring, you can find porcini, which are delicious, very sought after mushroom. Oyster mushrooms. So we talked about these for cultivation. You can buy kits and grow these at home, but you also can find them very easily in the woods around the Bay Area and Sonoma County. And they grow on hardwoods, usually oak trees. So you look for fallen oak trees. Really, they like to be out in the more rainy season. So when it starts raining a lot, that's when we start seeing the oyster mushrooms come out. And you can see they're here. Usually they're on fallen trees, but here's one growing on a tree that hasn't fallen yet on the right-hand side. And then again with the smell from trees, very sought after mushroom is the matsutake mushroom. And this is a very interesting mushroom. It smells like cinnamon. Or some people say red hots, if you know the candy, red hots smells like that. Fairly easier to identify, even though I was a little nervous about the white-gilled mushrooms at first, because the death cap and the destroying angel are white-gilled white mushrooms. But you can see here, with the smell and the appearance of it, see how it comes to a point. And it's kind of rusty colored right on the stem, and then it's got kind of a sandy little bottom to it. And it kind of likes to be in a little bit sandier loam next to tan oak trees. And then you smell it, and you smell that cinnamon smell. You absolutely know what it is. Very sought after in the Japanese culture. You can see this one on the upper left-hand corner. It's just starting to open. Unopened matsutake mushrooms can sell for like $25 a mushroom or more in the Japanese market. They're very highly sought after and quite delicious. Another popular one in the Bay Area is especially near the coastline, is what is called the hedgehog mushroom. So this has if you look closely at the picture, it has little teeth underneath it, and usually grows with huckleberries. Huckleberries grow a lot along the coast, near the coast of California. So you find huckleberry bushes. You will likely find some hedgehog mushrooms, usually around December and January. Very good mushrooms. Tastes kind of like chanterelles. Tan oak also have kokora mushrooms. So these are the ones that took me kind of a while to warm up to eating and identifying because they can look similar, and they do look similar, are in the same family as the amanita, the amanita is a destroying angel on the death cap. So you want to be sure it's more of an advanced mushroom, but I just shared it here because it is possible to correctly identify. You just have to be really careful and go with somebody who's experienced, especially on the ones that do have poisonous lookalikes. You definitely want to go with a mushroom club or make friends with some other people who are maybe more knowledgeable about mushrooms before you take on some of the more mushrooms that have poisonous lookalikes, basically. But very delicious mushroom, very sought after by a lot of Italians. Love this mushroom. It's very much used a lot. And when I went to Italy, I found it in the markets for sale everywhere. Very popular there. So delicious mushroom. The common name's kokora. It's a Amanita clepoderma, and here's my son holding one, and they get a little plate there that he's holding, and they're easier to identify when they're darker like that. They have a kind of orange cap, and it looks like a little white egg in the middle of the cap there, and that's a tan oak forest that he's sitting in there. That we found that. Burn morels. The morels can be found in the Bay Area. They often grow during the winter or early spring under apple and pear trees. So if you have an apple or pear tree or know where some apple or pear trees are, you might look underneath them in usually the January to February, maybe as late as March timeframe. And you can find morels under there, but more sought after are the burn morels, and they occur over 2,000 feet. So usually in the Tahoe area. So it's really sad, obviously, when we have a big fire. But part of the forest renewal, near the trees that have survived, usually Douglas fir trees, we will find burn morels. And it's a sign that the forest is recuperating. And so it's striking because you're kind of near these fire areas, but you're also finding these delicious mushrooms, and you see a lot of beauty even in the destruction, which is really interesting. So here's some snow plants, which often grow near the morels, and you can see my son there, dirty, covered with ash from us hiking around in this fire picking morels, but it can be a lot of fun too. And it is, part of the cycle of, when there's a fire, it seems like the morels, the mushrooms come in and help rehabilitate the soil and help the plants grow back, which is really cool to see. So here's some more pictures of burn morels. Really good with green vegetables. Really delicious. You can see they have some different colorations. They taste a little smoky. And then, us talking about how mushrooms have poisonous lookalikes. What I like to ask is, which one of these is the morel? It's the one on the right. The other two are other mushrooms that look similar but are not morels. A false morel with thimble cap, and then the morels on the right. So once you learn to identify it, following the books and everything, you would know just by looking at it that the morel is the one that's got the holes going all through it. That the false morel doesn't really have the holes, and that the other one is like a full. This doesn't even look like that much like the morel, but it gets mistaken for morels commonly. So how can you learn more about mycology other than books and Googling stuff online? Join a mushroom club. There's several mushroom clubs in the San Francisco area, the Bay Area. There's also great resources like MycoWeb and iNaturalist, and there's also a overarching big club, the North American Mycological Association, NAMA, that's overarching. That's like the American Mushroom Club. So all of these are great resources. A lot of them allow you to access some of the information for free and have a small membership fee to be a member. But it's a great way to learn, and a lot of them have outings, forays that you can go to that you can learn more, which is great to go out there with them and be with experienced mushroomers and learn more. So we've only just scratched the surface. Hopefully this piqued your interest. There's so many different delicious and interesting mushrooms to explore, and they're beautiful. I mean, they're just as interesting to me as plants and flowers and trees. It's something else to notice when you go in the forest. And there's so many different kinds that are so interesting, like the coral mushroom that looks almost like coral growing on the ground in the woods. I don't know if you've ever seen these. The cauliflower mushroom, which is grows usually at the base of trees or in trees. It's a parasitic mushroom, but it is used almost like noodles, like egg noodles, and in soup dishes, and is delicious. Some interesting mushrooms, perfect for this time of year, right before Halloween. We have a mushroom that eats another mushroom, a parasitic mushroom, like a zombie mushroom, if you will, a lobster mushroom, which smells like lobster, and is a delicious mushroom where a red fungus comes over and eats a white fungus and changes the flavor of it. And it's a very sought after mushroom and very beautiful looking. It's like bright red, orangish red. So there's just so many interesting and beautiful mycelium, even tiny ones. You know, now that the more I got into mushrooming, the more I started noticing all kinds of mushrooms, even little tiny ones. This one here on the right, so interesting and so pretty. I mean, it's just little teal mushrooms, and it actually turns the wood that it's growing on teal also, which I thought was so interesting and so beautiful. And just a lot of the little mushrooms are interesting too. And puffball mushrooms, these could get really large. Generally around here, they're the size of a softball. They can get even larger when they're fresh and they're white inside, not brown inside like the one pictured here, but when they're white inside, my family calls them the tofu mushroom because they're kind of just like foam, and you dice them up and use them kind of like you would tofu. They take on flavor, whatever they're cooked in, and kind of have a tofu consistency, the puffball mushrooms. And there's some really, back to this time of year, the stink mushroom, very interesting mushroom. You can see in the picture here, there's a fly on it. It smells like rotting flesh. It's kind of gross, but it attracts flies, and the flies walk all over it and get the spores on their legs and fly away, land somewhere else, and spread the spores. So another really interesting and weird mushroom species that you can observe. And that's it. So thank you for listening to my presentation, and we'll go on to questions now.
Thank you so much, Lisa. That was just wonderful. I loved hearing all your enthusiasm and knowledge.
Thanks. Thank you.
If there's anyone who has a question, you can you can put your question in the chat, or I can allow you to talk if you have a burning question that you feel you have to talk about. So let's see. Here's a question. How soon and how long after a burn can you find morels?
Usually it's the year after, the first year after the burn. So usually the burn happens in the summer, and then the following April, May timeframe, especially, because you're going over 2,000 feet to find burn morels, so it's usually in the mountains. So usually the following April, May is when you go. And they can happen also the second year after, but less prolific. So part of the reason people go after looking on the CAL FIRE and fire websites to see where the fires were this last summer is because the following spring, when everything's growing back, the mushrooms will be really plentiful. So they go to these burn sites because they can find lots of morels. That's why they're also really tasty. So the normal morels that don't grow in burns, like that grow in our area, at sea level, under, apple trees and pear trees, they taste good, but they don't have that smoky kind of interesting flavor that the burn morels have. So the burn morels are more sought after. If you see them for sale in the store, you'll see the burn morels cost more than the naturals, they call them, morels that grow outside of burns. Good questions.
Another question is, what kind of mushrooms should we avoid as beginners when identifying mushrooms? Or beginners at identifying mushrooms?
What should you avoid? So I think I mentioned that I was really scared at first of all the white-gilled white mushrooms, because that was what the death cap and the destroying angel mushrooms are in. So I kind of avoided those from like the first 5 years that I just avoided ones that looked like the deadly ones. So a lot of the beginning mushroom books, like All the Rain Promises More, will make recommendations. Like the golden chanterelle is a really good one. It's also now our state mushroom. So that's a good one to start with because there's no true poisonous lookalikes for the golden chanterelle. So that would be one that I would recommend. But follow the advice of the books, and if you join a mushroom club, they will tell you which ones. And when they go out for forays, they'll know, during this month, these mushrooms can be found because they all have their own season and time frame that they happen.
And then there's a couple questions. What's your favorite places to search in the Bay Area, and what are good hikes for beginners to start finding mushrooms?
So my recommendation is Point Reyes National Seashore and Salt Point State Park are legal places to collect mushrooms. And you should know that most state parks and national parks do not allow mushroom hunting. So you need to know where it's legal, not legal, or if you know, if you have private residences, people who have property that you can go mushrooming in. That's a good way to get started. But yeah, then Point Reyes National Seashore and Salt Point State Park allow mushroom collection. So those are great places to start. And etiquette wise, leave the forest the way you found it. It's okay to go off trail and things, but if you pick mushrooms, don't make a big mess. And if you pick a mushroom, you decide you don't want it, just put it back the way you found it. So, we don't want to lose our privilege to hunt in the very few state parks that, and National Seashore, we still are allowed to collect mushrooms. And so don't ruin it for everybody. That's my guidance.
Once one finds a mushroom patch, is it likely that returning to that same spot will yield the same mushrooms?
Yes, most mushrooms reoccur where you found them. Chanterelles do. Like I mentioned, morel, the burn morels, they come back, but with less ferocity after a fire. But if you have, like a pear tree or apple tree, they come every year. They should come every year, under pears and apple trees. Chanterelles grow in the same spot. Bluets tend to grow in the same area, not in the exact same spot. So yeah, most of them, porcini grow in the same general area near pine trees. So yeah, once you find a location, you remember that location. I go back to it and note the time of year that it happened and kind of what the weather conditions were. Because mushrooms tend to come around the same time of year, given the same type of conditions, right? So if it's like a really dry winter, we won't see very many mushrooms, but wetter winters, we see more. Super wet winters, it's too wet for the mushrooms. So you kind of take a note of when you found them, what the conditions were, what time of year, and what approximately how hot was it, how wet was it, and then try to go back to that location again that same time the next year, and you probably find something.
Okay.
Here,
Oh, you see that?
porcini,
yeah.
I see. So that there is porcini happens everywhere. So they, unlike the burn morels, which for whatever reason only happen over 2,000 feet, the porcinis happen everywhere. So porcinis are more dependent on weather condition and wetness. So like right now is actually they're just starting. We found I found the first porcini with my sister hiking this last Saturday at Jackson Demonstration Forest in Mendocino County. So they're just starting, and usually they happen up there sooner than they do down here towards San Francisco. So they're happening, and they happen in the Tahoe and the Sierras, usually in the spring and fall also, but earlier in the fall and later in the spring, or almost in the summer. So it just, because there's snow, there's snow up there. So as soon as the snow melts off and it gets to that same temperature conditions they like, they'll happen. And normally with pine trees around this area. So
Lisa, did you see this?
mushroom hunting etiquette. Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just saying, if you find, there's a question and answer one also. Should I read this one to you?
Sure, go
It
ahead.
says, if you find mushrooms past their prime, does it do any good to put them somewhere you know of? Any possibility they will repopulate somewhere else you put wasted mushrooms?
Yes. So I have collected mushrooms and all the detritus, all the stuff I cut off of them, which includes spores, I threw out in my property where I used to live. And after doing it for several years, I actually, some chanterelles grew on my property that didn't grow before in the area where I threw the detritus. So it can happen. So yeah, definitely put them out there, especially if you have the same trees or have an area near your house that has the same kind of trees that they were growing with. Yeah, put them there and put the spores there and see if they grow there. I mean, that's an excellent way to do it. It does work. And then
So
I saw
cool.
another question I didn't answer about the should leave some fruiting bodies for others or take them all. Well, mushroom greed is a real thing. I mean, you get really excited when you find mushrooms like, I want to take them all, but I try to leave the smaller ones for other people. I try to be polite and share. But if taking the last couple ones and they're smaller will make you have enough for dinner, then, go ahead and take them. Usually they'll fruit some more. So, but I do try to leave the smaller ones, especially if they're going to get bigger and mature more. I try to leave the smaller ones for someone else. It's good practice.
Somebody's
Right.
asking, where did you find golden chanterelles in the Bay Area and what season?
Golden chanterelles. So I found some this last weekend at Jackson Demonstration Forest. Usually I find them near mixed forests where there's a mix of trees, but also when they're usually always found for me with Doug fir. So if you know Douglas fir trees, and then there's other trees around the Douglas fir besides just Douglas fir. That's where I usually find them. You can find them at Point Reyes and at Salt Point State Park. But anywhere where it's wet and there's Doug fir trees, and usually they're more prolific when it's wetter and cooler. So more so in like December is when I find most of my chanterelles. Is December. There was one year I found on the property, my neighbor's property, 12 pounds in a December. So they're much more prolific in December, but they do start now, and they do go through most of the winter months. You can find them. So that's why they're a good starter mushroom and easy to find, because they're so bright. That bright golden orange really sticks out of the duff, makes them easy to find and exciting. Exciting to find those little yellow guys, little golden guys in the duff. Okay, so any other questions?
Looks like we're wrapped up here.
Great.
Thanks again,
Perfect.
Lisa. That was super
You're
fun.
welcome.